In the hyper-saturated digital landscape of the 21st century, where existence is increasingly equated with visibility, a quiet phenomenon is emerging within the global body of believers. If you scroll long enough, or perhaps if you pay close attention to the spaces between the noise, you might notice, or rather, fail to notice, a specific group of Christians who have effectively vanished from the public eye. These are the believers who never post photos. They do not document their morning coffee for an audience. They do not upload carefully curated selfies to garner affirmation. And they do not announce their personal achievements or celebrations with digital fanfare. In a culture that relentlessly screams, "Look at me," these individuals seem almost invisible, like ghosts in the machine. It is easy for the modern observer to misinterpret this silence. We might assume they are technologically illiterate, socially awkward, or perhaps hiding something. But if we peel back the layers of our digital assumptions, we find that behind this silence lies a profound spiritual depth. This is not an accidental absence. It is a theological stance. Today, we must journey into the biblical perspective of this intentional silence. Once you understand the spiritual weight behind why some Christians refuse to post, you will never see them, or your own social media feed, the same way again. The first and perhaps most critical pillar of this decision is the stewardship of testimony. When a Christian decides not to share their life online, it is rarely out of shyness. It is born out of a deep sense of prudence. They have grasped a terrifying and beautiful truth. Their life no longer belongs to them. They understand that they have been bought with a price, and therefore they represent Christ in every word, every photo, and every digital gesture. The book of Proverbs warns us in chapter 22, verse 1, that a good name is to be chosen rather than great riches. In our modern context, this wisdom extends directly to our digital reputation. These believers realize that not everything experienced needs to be exhibited. What seems harmless to us in the moment, a joke, a picture of luxury, a moment of liberty, can easily become a stumbling block for a weaker brother or sister scrolling through their feed. A mature believer understands that the sanctity of their testimony is worth infinitely more than the fleeting dopamine hit of a few likes. They are acutely aware that a single ill-conceived post, taken out of context, can destroy what years of integrity have built. Thus, guarding one's testimony is not about being religiously legalistic. It is about being wise. In a world that equates transparency with sharing everything without filters, silence becomes a profound form of discernment. The wise know that some things are simply meant to stay sacred, held in the quiet space between them and God. When someone views your social media, they are viewing a fragment of your faith. If that fragment confuses them rather than edifies them, the witness is compromised. Therefore, those who refrain from posting without a clear purpose show maturity, understanding that reflecting the character of Christ, even when no one is watching, is far more important than curating an image for those who are. Furthermore, these invisible Christians have made a conscious, counter-cultural decision to live to please God, not the algorithm. We are witnessing a generation enslaved to the mathematical equations of Silicon Valley, chasing visibility, engagement, and approval, as if the value of their faith depended on their follower count. But the mature believer refuses to play this game. They do not seek to please the public. They seek to please God. Romans 12:2 issues a clarion call not to conform to the patterns of this world. And today, there is no pattern more pervasive than the cycle of digital performance. It is a radical act to choose hidden obedience over online relevance. Those who live for God know that His approval is worth more than any statistic or viral metric. Algorithms change, platforms rise and fall, and digital attention fades like the morning mist. But when you live for Christ, the reward remains eternal. We often fall for the deception that posting more equals having more influence, but there is a vast chasm between impact and likes. God did not call you to be viral. He called you to be faithful. The Christian who chooses silence, limits their exposure, or refuses to depend on a screen for validation demonstrates that their identity is not built on human approval, but on divine obedience. Even if the world does not understand this withdrawal, God does, and for the faithful servant, that is enough. This leads us to the core theological anchor of their silence. Their identity is rooted in Christ, not in social validation. Many people today measure their self-worth by the number of red hearts they receive on a photo, as if those digital notifications could fill the infinite emptiness of the human soul. But a true Christian knows their identity is not built on a profile, but on a cross. The Apostle Paul writes in Galatians that we have been crucified with Christ, and that we no longer live for ourselves, but for Him. Posting to be seen is falling into the ancient trap of seeking human glory, an approval that is as unstable as the wind. The crowd that admires you today will forget you tomorrow, or worse, turn on you. But those who seek to please God are never outside of His gaze. The world screams, "Show who you are." But Christ whispers, "Let me show who I am in you." This is the fundamental difference between a superficial life managed by public relations and a transformed life managed by the Spirit. When your worth depends on the reactions of others, you become a slave to your own image. But when you know who you are in Christ, you do not need to prove anything to anyone. In this light, not posting is not insecurity, it is freedom. It reflects a soul that understands true validation does not come from a screen, but from heaven. Moreover, the invisible Christian possesses a heart that does not need to fix its problems publicly. Social media has morphed into a massive public confessional where people seek comfort in empty comments or approval disguised as empathy. We air our grievances, our heartbreaks, and our struggles to strangers, hoping for a healing that they cannot give. But a mature heart does not need to expose its pain to the masses to feel accompanied. It brings that pain to the feet of Christ. Consider King David in the Psalms. He did not broadcast his sadness to the crowds. He poured it out before God in prayer. Some spiritual battles are not won with public words, but with private tears. When someone chooses to keep silent about their struggles and surrender them secretly to the Lord, they show that their trust is in the one who can truly heal. Jesus taught that when you pray, you should enter your room and close the door. This teaching applies profoundly to the digital world. Not everything should be shared, and not everyone needs to comment on your process. Those who do not need to fix their lives publicly reveal spiritual maturity. They have understood that exposure does not bring deliverance, and applause does not bring healing. What God works in the secret place has more power than 1,000 reactions on a post. This silence is also a manifestation of humility, triumphing over self-promotion. In a generation where everyone wants to be seen, to stand out, and to be the center of attention, humility has become countercultural. But a Christian does not seek admiration. They seek to reflect Christ. James teaches that God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Not posting photos does not mean a lack of confidence. It is self-control. It is the heart saying, "I don't need to prove anything to feel valuable." While the world seeks applause, the believer seeks to please heaven. True greatness isn't shown, it's lived. Self-promotion is the modern disguise of pride. That subtle desire to say, "Look at me, I'm doing well, I have faith." But Jesus never sought attention. He sought to serve. Those who choose humility over exposure are walking the Master's path. In Philippians, we are reminded that Christ humbled himself, and if he did it, who are we to need to be the center? Humility doesn't make you invisible. It makes you more like Jesus. Additionally, this lifestyle protects privacy and fosters contentment. Some think that not showing their life means distrust, but often it is simply wisdom. Not everything should be exposed, and not everyone needs to know everything. Proverbs says, "The prudent see danger and take refuge." This includes digital traps. Social media is a showcase for comparison. Those who live comparing themselves end up frustrated. The Christian who chooses to keep their intimacy private shows that their satisfaction isn't in impressing others, but in living in peace. Contentment doesn't need an audience. Paul said, "I have learned to be content in whatever circumstance I am." That lesson has a modern version today: learning to enjoy without posting. Those who live in gratitude don't seek external validation because they already have internal joy. Not posting can be a way of saying, "I'm fine and I don't need to prove it." The one who protects their privacy also protects their heart, living free from the digital noise that distracts from eternal purpose. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, these believers practice the principle of secrecy. Jesus was clear in his teaching. Deeds born from the heart don't need a stage. In Matthew 6, he taught that when you pray or give, do it in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. Today, many seek that reward in the form of likes and human approval, but the mature Christian understands that authentic faith doesn't need publicity. Some acts lose their power when displayed. What you do in secret, God sees from above. What others don't see, heaven records. Practicing the principle of secrecy in a world that shares everything is a mark of spiritual maturity. Not showing it all doesn't make you a hypocrite. It makes you wise. Because not everything holy needs to be visible, and not everything visible is holy. The believer who learns to live without showcasing their faith proves that their relationship with God is real, not performative. They understand that their greatest reward won't come from a reaction on a screen, but from the Father's voice saying, "Well done, good and faithful servant." So sometimes those who don't post their lives online aren't hiding. They're protecting what's sacred. Don't judge them for their silence, because that silence may be the fruit of wisdom, not pride. Many lives show what they do, but few show who they are. And the truth is, we don't know the story behind every decision. Some have simply understood that the presence of God is worth more than digital presence, and that some things remain purer when they're not exposed.